global warming, completed global effects. In that, causes of greenhouse effect, completed. Earth has a greenhouse. Earth as a greenhouse, we have done it. Now let us discuss what is the role of carbon. Right, Nitesh? ఇక్కడే స్టాప్ చేసాము కదా.
Yes, ma'am.
ఎర్త్ యాజ్ ఎ గ్రీన్ హౌస్ వరకు డిస్కస్ చేసాము. రోల్ ఆఫ్ కార్బన్ దగ్గర మనం ఆగిపోయాము. అండ్ నౌ వీ హ్యావ్ టు గో ఆన్ ఫ్రమ్ 2.2.2 the end of the third unit. I think I have given some topics from unit 1 for seminars, and when I will be absent, you can continue with those topics. And when I come, let me take the class. And now let us discuss what is the role of carbon. Actually, to speak frankly, this semester is a very busy semester, as you are supposed to do many works which are completely associated with the practicum. Only 3 theory papers we have, but only we are dealing with those 3. In order to complete all the practical works, internship is very important. As it is not there, so you are free from all those. But lack of knowledge will be there. Anyways, you have to compensate it. Now, what is carbon and what is its role? Where do we find carbon? Let's start the session with questioning. మిమ్మల్ని క్వశ్చన్స్ అడగక చాలా రోజులు అవుతుంది.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, from your real life. And list the materials which you use in your daily life where carbon is the element in it.
Coal, ma'am. Coal and charcoal.
Hello?
Ma'am, coal and charcoal, ma'am.
It is not clear, Amani, once again.
Coal, ma'am. Coal
issue.
and charcoal are
Yeah,
main.
right. Yes, yes. Apart from coal and charcoal.
Carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide. Still, there are many materials. Each one, you can tell me one. The table your computer is sitting on, the clothes you are wearing, and the air you breathe, carbon is there. As an element, it is there. Sangamitra, you can tell me many examples. Carbon? Is carbon element present in the air?
Yes, ma'am.
Nitrogen.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
In the form of carbon dioxide, carbon is present. As it occurs in different forms, it occurs in different materials. In coal, carbon is there. In air, carbon is there in the form of gaseous. So, in different forms, carbon exists, and its atomic number is 6. It consists of 6 protons, 6 neutrons in its nucleus, with 6 electrons orbiting outside. Its electronic configuration is 1s2 2p2, and this is not that necessary, but we should know what is carbon and in which material carbon is present and what is its importance. How carbon enters the plants? See, let us make our session an interactive one. Otherwise, you people will feel boring, as there is no face-to-face mode of transaction. So, if I speak and if you speak, then it will be like interesting. Because time తెలియదు. Why? Because you people get involved. Otherwise, keep on listening. It is a bit difficult task for anyone, I understand. How carbon enters the plants? You just remember carbon cycle, like how we have the geochemical cycles, hydrogen cycle, nitrogen cycle, even we have carbon cycle.
Yes.
How carbon will be cycled in a cyclic process from the atmosphere, how carbon enters the plants, and from plants, how carbon enters the living beings, and from living beings, how carbon enters the atmosphere. This is what carbon cycle. And I think many times we have been discussed. How carbon enters the plants? It is simple.
During photosynthesis.
During the process of photosynthesis, as plants take in carbon dioxide in order to form a sugar molecule in the presence of sunlight by combining with water. And in this way, through CO2, carbon is getting entered into plants. And how carbon enters the living beings. That may be an animal, that may be a human being who is depending upon plants. How carbon enters from the plants? Through the food we get from plants. And how carbon comes out of the living beings? That may be an animal or a human being. How carbon comes out?
Respiration, ma'am. During respiration, we breathe oxygen and
that is not directly from the environment we are going to take. From the atmosphere, we are going to inhale and exhale. That is a process. And how from our body it is going to be liberated out is after the death and decay of life forms, that may be an animal or a human being. Carbon is going to enter into the atmosphere. Again, it is going to be made available for the plant. And when you breathe in and when you breathe out, it may also enter into the atmosphere. And these are the ways, these are the different sources where carbon is a part of different materials. Whatever the materials you use in your daily life, the important element is carbon. And when you take a human being as an example, and we have different kinds of materials like proteins. What are proteins? I think we have discussed about proteins during third semester in our health and physical education. What are proteins?
bodybuilding food.
Bodybuilding materials. These are very much essential for the building of body, for the growth of a body. And as they constitute a big or major portion of the body, and the important element in the proteins is carbon. And we have nucleic acids too. What are nucleic acids? Marchipayaru. Only thing is we are discussing and we are thinking about is about COVID-19 coronavirus. That's it. Right? If you switch on your TV, what is the news? We are going to hear about only coronavirus. Now you have to think about the television with which the material is made up of. With the table on your TV screen is sitting. But about that material you just think now. What are nucleic acids? DNA and RNA are considered as nucleic acids. What is the material present in the nucleic acid? Simply we are enlisting the materials in which carbon is present. And what is the importance of carbon in the life of a human being? We are discussing about. Now, let us take DNA. What is DNA? Don't tell me it's a structure or it's a composition or something else. What is it and what is why is it important? That's it.
Ma'am, they inherit the qualities. They inherit the qualities from one generation to the other.
In order to have now spring, whatever the information present in the DNA, it is very much important in order to pass the same information in order to produce an offspring. And in that DNA also, carbon is the major material. If you take proteins, it is bonded to some other elements. If you take carbohydrate, let us take the example of glucose. You know very well the chemical equation of photosynthesis. CO2 plus H2O gives, in the presence of sunlight, gives rise to C6H12O6 plus oxygen. This oxygen will be liberated out from the plants. And C6H12O6. What are the elements present in the sugar molecule called glucose? There are three different elements. What are they? C, H and O. Carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Here carbon is bonded to hydrogen and oxygen. Here carbon is bonded to many other elements to form carbohydrates and proteins and the major elements of are nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen. In sugar, in order to form a carbohydrate, carbon is very much important. We are just listing out the importance of carbon and its presence in different materials. If you take proteins, carbon is the major element. If you take carbohydrates, carbon is the major element. If you take lipids, fats, carbon is the major element. And from this, you just tell me the importance in one sentence. As human body is made up of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Now tell me its importance in a statement. Can you imagine your life without carbon?
It is a fundamental element.
మనకు మూవీలో డైలాగ్ ఉంది కదా, శరీరం అంటే మట్టి కాదు, ఇట్ ఇస్ కార్బన్. Simply our life is based on carbon. Our life is a carbon based life. Without carbon, the existence of life form is impossible. Such an importance it has got. And it is not only the animals and human beings require carbon. It is very much important for plants. And as we know very well, plants prepare their food in the presence of, like by taking carbon dioxide from the environment, and in the presence of sunlight, they are going to give rise to sugar molecule, which serves as food material for the plant, and they are going to liberate oxygen. And carbon present in carbon dioxide is very much essential for the plants too. How proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids are very much important for the formation of human body, as how carbon and carbon compounds are very much important, essential for the formation of human body. Even plants need carbon in the form of carbon dioxide to prepare their own food material, that is nothing but glucose or sugar molecule, C6H12O6. And in this way, carbon is not only important for animals and human beings, it is also very much important for the plants to survive. And from where do the plants get carbon? It is from the carbon dioxide, which is present in the atmosphere, as it is a part of atmospheric gases, and we call it as a greenhouse gas too. And its presence is very much important in for the survival of plants. Now, this is the role of carbon, and now we have to discuss fossil fuels. Shilaja indanalu. What are fossil fuels? In order to, for a human body, fuel is needed in the form of food. For the automobile student, fuel is very important in the form of gasoline, like petrol, diesel, etc. How fuel is very important for the functioning of human body in the form of food, it is also important for the other materials to run. And from where do we get fossil fuels? You might have studied about these fossil fuels previously, I suppose. Now we have to look into what are fossil fuels and how are they formed. Yeah. There are three important fossil fuels like oil, coal, and natural gas. And how are they going to be formed? Now let us look into. మరి శిలాజ ఇంధనాలు ఎక్కడి నుంచి వస్తాయో చెప్పండి. Give me the simple definition.
Earth crust.
How are they going to be formed?
When there is a natural disaster.
Telling me about the place of formation. Formation.
Decay of the human bodies, all the organisms.
Yes. Death and decay of plants, animals, as well as human beings. From especially we have to speak about dead plants and animals. From them we are going to have fossil fuels, and these are formed billions of years ago. And there are three important fossil fuels we have: coal, oil, and natural gas. How your body needs food, and how your automobiles need gasoline products, and how heat is required in order to heat our home, fuel is very much important. And from where do we get this fuel? From fossil fuels. Coal is necessary for the generation of electricity. And natural gas is also produced from petroleum products, which are a product of fossil fuels. And we are using these products in order to lead a comfortable life. And how are they formed? Let us look into. And if you look into coal, oil, and natural gas, these are considered as sources of energy. And which kind of energy source it is? Is it a renewable or a non-renewable source?
Non-renewable.
There are non-renewable. Why are they termed as non-renewable sources? There are energy sources have been classified into two: renewable energy sources, non-renewable energy sources. And what are renewable and what are non-renewable? Tell me an example.
Ma'am, these coal, natural gas and crude oils are non-renewable, ma'am, because once they are done, we cannot get it.
Once they are used up, they cannot be replenished back.
But
Replenished back, you know.
Yes. Sunlight,
if you use today's sunlight,
and wind energy is also renewable source.
Yes, tomorrow again you are going to have the same sunlight, wind, etc. But in case of non-renewable, they cannot be replenished back. Even though if you want to replenish them, it takes millions of years. That is the reason why we should make use them in a controllable way. It is not that you are not supposed to use them. It is highly impossible. Without these fuels, we cannot run our life. You have to use, but we have to minimize the usage of these products. In order to replenish them, it takes long time. And briefly, we say that they are not non-renewable. We cannot renew them. If at all we can renew, it takes millions of years of time. That is the reason why we have to be very cautious in using non-renewable resources. And let us look into the story of fossil fuels, which began millions of years ago. And at the time, like millions of years back, before the dinosaurs first appeared on the earth, and at the time there were only tiny plants and animals, not the human beings. And especially they were present, and they used to live in the oceans of the world. And as these plants and animals died, they sank into the bottom of the ocean floor. And this particular organic matter was covered by layers of rock, sand, and mud that later turned into the sedimentary rock. As these layers of rock, this story you have in your textbook, you can go through it later. As these layers of rock grew thicker and thicker, the organic matter ended up being placed under a greater amount of pressure. And over millions of years, this high pressure transformed the partially decomposed plant and animal matter into the major energy source that we know as oil and natural gas. Now let us look into how coal is formed. Now, did you get how oil and natural gas is formed? Millions of years ago, there used to live only tiny plants and animals in the oceans of the world. As these plants and animals died, they sank into the bottom of the ocean floor. There, they were covered with rock, mud, sand, etc. And this particular substance get hardened, and they formed into a sedimentary rock as the years passed by. And this rock has been subjected to greater amount of pressure in the bottom of the ocean floor. And because of this pressure, transformed this partially decomposed plant and animal matter into the energy source called oil and natural gas. And from these deeper layers of the ocean, we dig oil and natural gases, and we just get in the form of crude oil, and by the process called fractional distillation, we are going to separate it into different forms of petroleum products. Now let us look into how coal is formed. Now how Is it clear how oil and natural gas is formed?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, you're not audible.
Yes, ma'am, we got it.
Okay. How coal is formed? Let us see. It is also formed through same type of process, and here coal originates mainly from dead tree and plant matter, and this also dates back to millions of years back. And millions of years back, leafy plants and trees died and sank into swamps and bogs. What are swamps and bogs? These dead plants and trees sank is nothing but sinking. It is the past tense of sink. These got sank into swamps and bogs. Swamps are nothing but waterlogging areas. Small waterlogging areas, and these are the areas of the land at the surfaces of the. Simply, we can call them as surface depressions too, where water has been logged. Into such sources, these dead plants and trees got sank. And this mix of water with the dead trees and plants converted it into a soupy plant-filled stew called peat. We call it as the mixture of water as well as dead plants and trees matter called as peat. This led to the formation of peat. This soupy mixture is called as peat. This peat became buried under deeper layers of the sediment, and water was squeezed out, and because of the evaporation, water was squeezed out, and the remaining material over the millions of years and the compounds are the materials present within the peat were subjected to heat and pressure, transforming them into carbon-rich substance we know as coal. And we dig the coal, and we just use coal in order to generate electricity. Whatever the power now we are consuming, a major part of it is being generated by coal. And in this way, coal has been formed. We dig oil and natural gas from the depth of the ocean floor. This coal is formed by the death and decay of plants and trees which sank into swamps, and this sinking transformed that material into soupy structure called peat, and this peat got buried into the deeper layers of the sediment. There water was squeezed out, and the remaining material, the concentrated material without water, is subjected to high amount of heat and pressure. As you go depth inside, increase in temperature we can experience, and because of increase in temperature and pressure, because of their effect, this particular concentrated material is transformed into carbon-rich substance called as coal. Here,
Yes, ma'am.
how coal is formed. Over the time, it takes millions of years, and because of the effect of pressure and heat, this particular material, concentrated material, when water was squeezed out, after the squeezing of water from that material, it is subjected to high heat and pressure over millions of years ago, and transformed this particular concentrated material into carbon-rich substance called coal. And we dig the coal, and we have coal mines too. And now our next topic is fossil fuel as energy. Now you have to tell me how fossil fuel is been considered as energy and what is photosynthesis. Now here we have to discuss a little regarding carbon cycle. So just now we have did that, but again, how fossil fuels are being used as energy sources. These are the great source of energy because they originate from living beings. What is photosynthesis? In Greek, photo means light, synthesis, and the suffix synthesis means to make. So photosynthesis is using the energy of sunlight to make food. Now let us look into how the energy will remain intact in the material. Just now I said water was squeezed out and the remaining concentrated material is being converted into carbon rich source which consists of energy, and it is transformed as a carbon rich substance called coal. Okay, how energy is being present in that? From where do we get the energy? During the process of photosynthesis, the plants take in sunlight. In the presence of sunlight, photosynthesis, photo means light, is nothing but to make. These plants are taking in carbon dioxide, and they also take sunlight and use it as energy source and transfer the same energy source to the materials which are going to produce. And the sugar molecule also energy will be there, and when we consume it, the same energy is being transferred to the living other life form too, which are depending upon these autotrophs or the plants which they prepare the food on their own. The energy is being transferred. Now we have to discuss with an example how energy remains intact. Okay, we speak about like coal, oil, and natural gas. Now how they are formed, we have seen. Now how the energy remains intact in such kind of materials, we have to discuss about. Let us take an analogy. Now take some amount of spinach leaves. What is the space they are going to cover? Before they are cooked up, they occupy a lot of space. Is it not right?
Yes, ma'am.
They occupy a lot of space, and just cut the leaves, take them into a container, add few little water, then cook it up. What happens when you go for frying spinach leaves? This you can visualize it. Now we are discussing how energy remains in contact with these materials, the so-called fossil fuels. This, in order to explain that, we are drawing out an analogy. Now take spinach leaves, cut them, add a little amount of water, then cook it up. What happens? Are they going to occupy the same space before they were raw?
No, ma'am. It will be reduced, ma'am.
The volume will be reduced.
Yes, ma'am.
And that material we call it as concentrated. Here what happened? During heating, water got evaporated. As it is subjected to amount of heat, you are supplying heat in the form of stuff. And because of heat, water got evaporated. Water was squeezed out. In the same way, from the peat and from the sedimentary rock, water was squeezed out. And when the coal has been formed, water was squeezed out, and the rest material, the concentrated material, because of the effect of heat and pressure, it got transformed into carbon rich. Why it is carbon rich? As carbon is present in living beings and living things, especially plants. As they take in carbon dioxide, as they are going to form a sugar molecule, which consists of carbon, as the carbon is the major element in them, it is a carbon rich material. And this concentrated material, because of the effect of heat and pressure, they are going to form coal. Here also, your spinach leaves, water got evaporated, and the concentrated material in the form of little content of spinach leaves, in that energy remains intact. It is not going to evaporate in the form of through water. The energy remains intact. When you consume spinach leaves, the energy is going to be transformed to the human beings. In the same way, energy remains in contact with the coal too. As it is subjected to heat, water gets squeezed out, and the remaining concentrated material consists of energy. And that energy, we are using it as fuel in order to run our automobiles, in order to heat our homes, in order to electrify our homes. We are using that energy, and these sources of energy are called as non-renewable sources of energy, as you cannot renew them in a short period of time. If at all, if we can renew, it takes some millions of years. So whatever the resources we are using now, they have formed over the past millions of years ago. That is the reason why we have to be very cautious in using such kind of resources. Now tell me the advantages of fossil fuels. We've discussed what are the advantages of fossil fuels with reference to coal, oil and natural gas. How are they helpful? You can list out them. How coal is helpful for us?
For electricity generation, ma'am. Electricity generation.
You have to tell me the advantages with reference to these three. You can write these topics on your own. If you give a glance, then it is. If you hear, you can write, I suppose. Now just think and tell me, what are the advantages? What is the use of natural gas? To run automobiles. For electricity generation. Still, natural gas. What is the use of natural gas?
Cooking, ma'am.
Ma'am, we are using biogas now these days. Biogas for cooking purpose.
Still, we use natural gas as it is highly efficient for heating, cooking, making hot water, etc. Still, for electricity generation, for running automobiles, for cooking, heating, etc., we use fossil fuels. Even though we are using in large amounts, even they are available abundantly. But there is a depletion in the recent years. We have seen that there is a depletion in the availability of these resources. So, as the population is ever increasing, and this is creating this ever increasing population as creating, and now I'm discussing about disadvantages too, and like cooking, heating, for running vehicles and for electricity generation, they are helpful. Now I'm going to speak about disadvantages of fossil fuels, and this ever increasing population is laying a big stress, much stress on these non-renewable resources. What happens? They are going to be used up by highly increased population in a short period of time. Adi meeku elago baga telusu. If their population is big, then the stress on the usage of natural resources or non-renewable resources will be more obviously. So, as we cannot control this population as it is ever increasing, we have to minimize the use of the non-renewable resources. మరి ఏం చేయాలి? Okay, population will be increasing as we cannot control. See, having 2 children is an obvious part. We cannot minimize such kind of things. As population is increasing, then how can we minimize the usage of? Can you stop cooking or can you stop using automobiles or vehicles?
We should go for natural resources, ma'am, like using sunlight, solar cookers, solar panels. So like that we can consume these
renewable sources of energy. SS, Ramani. You have to shift to the usage of renewable sources of energy, where you can renew them, which can be replenished all the time. We have to shift to alternate sources of energy. In order to conserve the resources, we have to shift to alternate sources of energy, the so-called renewable energy, and especially wind energy and solar energy, which are free of cost. The sun god is not charging us anything, but charge this much upon the installation. For this, government need to take the initiative to give incentives, such kind of plans and homes, so that when the government is succeeding I suppose, to install solar packs, which can run on the pumps also in the field for water pumping. Motors are by using the solar panels which size energy to run motor pumps. Such kind of subsidies need to be provided by the government so that everyone will come forward to concentrate on this alternate sources of energy. Otherwise, it is good. No fee, no bill will be there, but it installation cost is much. In order to help the people to shift to alternate sources, government has to take the initiative. But what our government is doing, is it stressing on such kind of resources?
No, ma'am.
Now only we are dealing with only one thing, that is coronavirus. Other than that, there is no talk. And from yesterday or day before yesterday, I suppose Etara Rajendra has come into scene picture and elections. Other than
Yes,
these
ma'am.
three, there is no other news or there is no other initiative in order to have a development. Only elections, coronavirus, and meanwhile, big personalities like Etara Rajendra has committed many illegal encroachments, and such kind of people our TV will focus, and even our government will stress upon. And carbon in and out of living things, let us continue tomorrow.